Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. Another brand new week. I'm Ayo Makinde.
And I'm Kayode Kikiri. Thank you for joining us.
Well, we'll go straight to papers, but just to quickly mention that, it's going to happen this week. The border closure, hopefully the federal government is going to discuss it. How far so far? And of course, all of that conversation is going on about the proprietary or otherwise of opening the borders. But then, have all those conditions been met? Have all those reasons been allayed? Do we still have fears or are they all gone? Is it time to open the borders? Are all the issues responsible for the federal government closing the borders in the first place, have they all been resolved? It'll be good to know.
Well, I think it depends on who you're asking, really. As you would expect, the response will be different. Now, for example, the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, they're saying, well, this is not a good idea. In fact, I think the term is, this is an error. For example, the Abuja Chamber of Commerce and Industry saying this is a huge error, especially at a time where we just, signed AFTA. We're looking at African trade. But of course, if you ask the government, this is predicated on smuggling, like you said, other countries not keeping their end of the bargain. And of course, to try to improve local production of rice and maybe other things. So it depends on who you're asking. But it looks as though we might be forced to reopen that border. Don't forget, Nigeria is in a recession right now. And to be honest, we're looking out for ways to cushion this effect, and especially for those areas around the borders. We had this report detailing what goes on around those borders. You see that for them, life is not quite smooth because that was their major earner. Yeah. And even for people exporting, they're saying that their product share in other African markets is not very favorable. So maybe, just maybe, we might be seeing that border open.
But then, those issues, have they been resolved? Or is there any fear that maybe in the nearest possible future, we're going to have the borders closed all over again? We don't know, but I guess time will tell. The papers this morning, and the Nigerian Tribune comes first. We open with that one, and guess what's on the front page? Yes, that one. Borno rice farmers, at least 110 killed, says the United Nations in a release by the resident coordinator in Nigeria. Zulum at funeral of 43 vows to recruit more hunters and men for civilian JTF. Borno farmers cry out, want government to intervene, have given armed forces all they need to protect citizens, says the president. Massacre, testament of Buhari's failure, according to the PDP. Northern governors, CNG, others condemn attack. This is coming at a time after which the northern governors had that meeting, and one of the issues they raised is that of security.
Yeah.
Well, this is what we have on the front page.
And I think for that 110 killed, don't forget, the figures so far has been like over 40, 43. But then the UN Coordinating Office for Humanitarian Affairs put out a statement earlier yesterday saying 110. But apparently that statement was amended again to say tens of people were killed. So this was the first statement that was put out. An amendment was put out. But I'm not quite sure if it was a retraction or what. But clearly there's still some clarification to be made.
Well,
there.
Perhaps also more clarifications from that same source. So many other stories you find on the front page. But right above the nameplate, why 8 states landed in financial distress. That's according to a report. What report is that? The story is on page 6 of the Nigerian Tribune today.
Well, take a look at the Vanguard newspaper. It leads with that sad one, really sad story. Outrage over killing of 43 farmers, fishermen in Borno. 10 women still missing, says Amnesty International. Killing of farmers insane, says Buhari. Massacre, most violent direct attack against civilians in 2020. UN. Redouble your efforts to end violent crimes in Nigeria, Lawan tells security agencies. The PDP condemns killings, tasks Buhari on security. More riders. Ganduje's aide condemns killings, says 24-hour after attack. Nobody sacked, no action taken. He shall do the needful about endless killings in the north. ACF, I believe that's to the president, but in case you're wondering who that is to, you have more details. On page 5, you see 7 killed in fresh attack on Kaduna community on page 6. Don't forget, still our eyes on the economy. FGCBN points to results in economic recovery plan.
Everyone is looking forward to that.
Oh, yes.
Still, the same story you find leading the front page of the New Telegraph is about the killings in Borno. Outrage over farmers killing. Governor weeps as 44 beheaded farmers are buried. UN says it's over 110 slaughtered in Borno rice farm. Borno villager says military aware of planned attack. Well, how far so far? We'll find out. Governors Ohaneze, Afenifere, NEF, PDP lament a National Assembly to recruit agencies and mindless crimes. Beg your pardon. National Assembly to security agencies and mindless crimes. How that is going to happen, we certainly will want to find out. Under that picture you see there, polls, PDP procured judgment against APC. That's according to Silva. Find out what all of that is about. Accuses judge of being opposition's sympathizer. The front page of the New Telegraph this morning has that one.
Well, next up is Daily Times. Boko Haram kills 43 farmers. That's the lead story this morning. And the picture is quite a contrast. You know, the lead story has that sad one. But then the big picture shows some cultural display at the closing ceremony of 2020 NAFEST in Jos. So, quite two extremes, really, of what's been playing out across the country. And you see, economy, investors, and equities market gained 390.26 billion naira in 1 week. It was, I mean, there were a few shaky days, but that's the picture for the whole week for you. It's on page 2. And there's an editorial, Havoc on Inflationary Pressure. That's the editorial on the Daily Times this morning.
Experts seek better package for police to tackle insecurity. That's the way the leadership puts it this morning on its front page. That's the lead story of the leadership newspaper today. Say 18.4 billion naira 2021 budget for the force insufficient. Blame inadequate budget releases, training, equipment for underperformance. Mixed reactions trail Kakovitz's proposed 100 billion naira police rehabilitation fund. So much packed into that story for anyone who is taking a good look. But that's what you have there on the front page. The story is on page 4. Right under the nameplate, 25 million Nigerians to get solar home system at 4,000 naira monthly. Details of that are on the inside pages of the paper this morning.
Well, next up is Nigerian News Direct, leading with nationwide blackout over power grid collapse. That's the lead story for the Nigerian News Direct. You must have experienced it, except that for some people, they're not quite sure which one is as a result of a nationwide, power grid collapse or, the usual, but clearly this was a major issue over the weekend, and you find more details on page 16. Honestly, I think I've lost count of how many grid collapses I've experienced in recent times.
I actually checked that out yesterday when I saw that story, and I found out that in June of this year, the TCM put out a report and said we've had 108 collapses since the privatization program began. So the question that you want to ask is, what exactly is going on? TCN, according to that report, is of course fully owned and operated by the federal government. And the question you want to ask then is, what is happening? Because if we have a problem with the transmission of power, clearly, no matter how much power is generated, no matter what the capacity of the distribution channel is, if they don't get the supply, what's going to happen?
Should I just say that after almost 2 months, my community got their transformer. So, it's interesting. It was a period of celebration. It took some days to energize it again,
To even get used to the fact that you now have...
Oh, yeah. I mean, for the period after it was installed, yes, there was no power, but, there was a transformer there. So you see people go to it and just look at it and smile and say, wow, so we have a transformer back now. It's just amazing, the intrigues you find in the power sector as a consumer and, of course, as an operator, different intrigues, and you just wonder, well, how long more would we have to endure this? But that's what you find on the front page of Nigerian News Direct this morning. And there's something right at the bottom. You see, Nigeria spends $11.17 billion on debt service in 9 months. That's according to the CBN. So yeah, that's how much we spend on debt servicing, covering the interest and the principal of loans that we have taken as a nation. A couple of other stories.
And you know, if you find on that same particular story you talked about, if you benchmark that against, you know, capital investments and all those things, you're wondering, do we really have to go that route? That report also comes to mind that says that that's trying to detail how some states got into financial distress. For a state in Nigeria to be in financial distress at this time of a recession, I'm sincerely wondering how we're going to get out of this. Because as another report that I read from a university lecturer said, you know, if he did a research and said, look, if we're going to get out of recession, the biggest spending, the biggest investment, the biggest intervention has to come from the states. Now, if the states that are supposed to be the biggest interventionists are the ones that do not have that kind of resource, and they are the ones that are in distress according to that also other report, which I haven't looked at, where do we go from here?
Different arguments to that one, but hey, clearly there needs to be a recovery, and we look forward to that. Let's leave it there for the Nigerian News Direct.
Well, just before we take on the issues for the world, it's actually one of those issues for the day. You have seen that report as well, that there's been some killings in 2 communities in Jamal local government area of Kaduna State, and the figures seem to have been increasing. First it was 6, then it was 7, and we hear that as of yesterday it was 8. And so how far so far? How did we get here? Is this a continuum of the things that we've been having before? Thought we already had a lead on this. Well, the Commissioner for Internal Security and Home Affairs in Kaduna State, Samuel Aruwan, joins us this morning just for a quick update. Good morning and thank you for joining us, Mr. Aruwan. The natural question anyone would want to ask is, wait a minute, is this a continuation or this is completely different? What exactly happened? Please give us an update.
Well, thank you very much, Ayo, for having me. Well, as a matter of fact, on the 28th of November 2020, the Nigerian military carrying out security operation in southern part of the state under the auspices of Operation Safe Haven, reported to Kaduna State government of an attack in one area called Ngwampa in Jamal local government area of the state. And according to the military, a header one Isiaka Saidu was actually killed by unknown persons. So immediately, the security agencies embarked on a massive investigation, and at the end of the day, 3 suspects were actually arrested. So after about 4 hours, that is in the early hours of yesterday, 29th of November 2020, the military again reported back to the state government that unknown gunmen had attacked Ngwambidu in the same local government area, and 6 locals were actually killed. And immediately, the state government received the operational feedback from the military. We issued out a statement detailing what actually transpired. Furthermore, the military come up again with another update informing the state government that so far it has arrested 5 suspects who are presently being interrogated ahead of prosecution. 4 houses were set ablaze, 4 persons were injured, and 2 children were also missing in Ngwambidu. As at yesterday, the military further reported back to the state government that 2 children were saved. They were sighted wandering in a forest after their pastoralist parents fled the area. So for now, this is the update that I have. Aside the fact that one other dead body was also discovered yesterday, making the total number, making it 8 people were confirmed dead as we speak.
Okay, well, one also asks, the number of questions a number of people would want to ask you is, what is the source of this one? How come this happened? I know that, you've done extensive work as far as, all of these issues of security in Kaduna are concerned, and I also know that there is an intelligence network of sorts. So what happened that we were not able to get ahead of this such that we lost 8 people in Kaduna South?
Well, I think only investigation will unravel the entire story. But what is factual is the fact that a 13-year-old header, was killed, as reported by the military in their operational feedback to the government. Furthermore, in the early hours of yesterday, like I said, there was another attack in which 6 local were also killed. So
just quickly on that one, Mr. Aruwan, just quickly on that one. The first one happened on Saturday, the second one happened on Sunday. Was it a reprisal?
Well, from what the military informed us, it's a killing and counter killing, and investigation is in progress. So as soon as the military and police conclude the investigation, you will get to know the entire story. But what is apparently clear is a killing and counter killing.
For some people, they say that this is a resurgence of the violence which we've seen over time in that area. You say that you need investigations to unravel this, but we've had attacks in the past. What came out of them? What was the result of the investigations? Perhaps this might help us understand what we're seeing now. So what do you have about the previous attacks across areas in southern Kaduna?
Well, as you know, security issues or security challenges are not only happening in southern part of the state or Kaduna state. We have security challenges across the state. But one thing is very clear: the government is strengthening the justice system so that whosoever that is found wanting will face the law. And ahead of that, beyond boots on the ground, that is beyond physical security that are on the ground, government is also driving a peace building initiative that is driven by the Kaduna State Peace Commission. So we are doing a lot, but the major problem that pose a big challenge is failure to recourse to the law. Since 2015, when this administration came on board, government have made it very clear that if pastoralists in the course of grazing come under attack or have any challenge, what they should do, they should report, they should recourse to the law. And the same thing is applicable to farming communities or communities that host headers. If someone goes to the farm and is missing, or if there is any problem, what they should do, they should report. All sides must recourse to the law. Failure to recourse to the law has been a major problem and has been source of the incessant conflict that we are witnessing, not only in Jama local government, but in largely the flashpoints in southern part of the state. But I have told you, we've made progress so far. 5 people have been arrested. Investigation is in progress, and at the end of the day, all of them will be charged to court.
Well, yes. You say that this is as a result of people, in quote, taking laws into their hands. But you also said that if, for example, a pastoralist is attacked during grazing, so that's also a root cause of what we're seeing. So the question would be, I'm sure you've seen trends of attacks happening during grazing for pastoralists or for farmers, vice versa over time. So in that area, yeah, the law aside, but in the area of grazing, ensuring that those attacks don't even happen or people maybe respect their boundaries or respect their lands, what is the government doing regarding that?
Well, we've been doing a lot of confidence building and peace engagement, and I have also informed you that the Kaduna State Peace Commission is pursuing an aggressive peace building across the state. As we speak now, the Peace Commission has assembled a group of experienced and respected clergy from across the two faiths who involved in for engagement to really to deepen the peace building process. And on the side of the government, again, you cannot also ignore the fact that you need physical security, even though it is practically impossible to have security asset in all the nook and crannies of Kaduna State. But what is important is communities must understand that peace is important. Communities must also resolve to live in peace. And that is why since 2015, this administration has been preaching one clear message that everyone must recourse to the law. That is why I cite an example here by saying that if pastoralists in the course of grazing come under attack, on no account should they take an action without recourse to the law. And the same thing is applicable to farming communities or communities that host headers. If someone goes to the farm and he's missing, or if there's any problem, what all sides must do must to recourse to the law. Because if all sides recourse to the law, most of the bloodshed, most of this conflict that we are witnessing will not be there, or there will be gradual reduction of violence.
Yeah, Ms. Arua, very quickly before we let you go, you talked about and have quoted copiously what the military has done in this intervention, this one in particular. But you haven't mentioned the role of the police or other security agencies who should be ahead of this one as well. What's the role of other security agencies in ensuring internal security in Kaduna, and what kind of collaboration are we having?
I think by virtue of what I have explained, other security agencies are not isolated or diverse. For instance, the Operation Safe Haven that is working in southern part of the state is a tri-service outfit. And again, there are police, there are civil defense, there are plainclothes police that are part of their operation. Added to that, there are two mobile police force squadrons that are on the ground in southern part of the state. The squadron in Kafanchan, the squadron in Kaduna, personnel were drawn from the squadron in Kaduna and other squadrons to join up. So what I have said, I did not in any way isolate the role of police and other security agencies. As we speak, we have interagency collaboration alongside with government, and we're doing a lot of engagement. I have told you that this morning there is a certain group that was inaugurated by the governor, Kaduna House of Family. This House of Family is a group of seasoned and experienced and respected religious leaders from the two faiths in the state. The Kaduna House of Family is co-chaired by the duo of Sheikh Ahmed Gumi and also Apostle Nuhu Kuri. They are right now in southern start engagement for critical stakeholders. So we're doing quite a lot beyond the issue of physical security and government in providing logistic and mobility support to security agencies.
Well, we can only wish you, the very best in all of this and ensure that as much as possible, no more life is lost because of insecurity and all of that. And whatever else needs to be done, we trust that you would do your best to ensure that no more lives are lost, because every life lost in Nigeria is very, very precious. Samuel Arua, Commissioner for Internal Security and Home Affairs in Kaduna State, thank you so much for your time and thoughts.
You're welcome.
So we take a short break and we'll be right back. Major General John Eninche joins us this morning to discuss that and several other insecurity issues, especially in the north of Nigeria. He is a coordinator, Defense Media Operations, Defense Headquarters. Thank you for joining us this morning, General. Well, the natural question anyone would want to ask you first is, it's been more than 10 years since we've been dealing with this insurgency. What exactly is going on? Are we missing something somewhere? Are we losing the battle? Is Boko Haram gaining ground again? Please bring us up to speed so people can understand.
Thank you very much for having me on the program this morning. Just like you have said, we have been on this issue, particularly in the Northeast, for about 10 years now. And incidentally, I want to state that I was part of it as far back as 20 years ago. Why am I placing it on that? Because the issue of insecurity with particular reference to these heinous crimes and criminality that has dovetailed and metamorphosed into insurgency and terrorism in the narrowed down to the 3 states of the Northeast now, did not just start 10 years ago. Let me now give an example quickly. As at then, I was in the first multinational joint task force as the engineer commander under General Temlong retired. And we operated severally. The epicenter then was between Mungunu and Baga. And it would surprise people to hear that as far back as it were then, the criminals who call themselves Kwanta, robbing people, collecting levies and all, we captured some weapons from them. These are the same kind of weapons we are seeing today, less short of gunships. Is it the general purpose machine gun, the mortar, and then the AK-47 rifles, amongst others. Having said that, I want to say that this thing is a long-rooted issue. And now let me bring it closer home to the 10 years ago or thereabout that we have all come to agree with now, that it started then. That was when they came out, after saying that Western education is bad, it's not good and all, and came out with this ideology that does not conform with what the religions in this country practice, and particularly in that area. And then they started. And when they started, what was the situation? I will now summarize it. Several places, the slaughter, as we will call it, and the murder, the killings were so much high, up till 2015. I think at a particular time, even beyond the enclave where we have the issue so much now, particularly Adamawa, Bruno, and then Yobe State, even in Kano, in one sweep, 120 killed in one day in a mosque. In Kaduna, in Niger, amongst others, even as close as the Federal Capital Territory, we had those challenges. And the thing started narrowing down. Then from 2015 up to 2016, the thing now was almost eradicated completely with the various operational strategies that came in, up to domination. Now, after that, we now started having cases here and there. And the major issue we had, as it were, was the issue of giving information, credible information to help the first package that was on ground, the armed forces and other security agencies.
But before you go to those other issues, General, just a moment, General. Before you go to those other issues, now you have mentioned the challenges, the main issues that have arisen, the infractions, the offenses, the crimes that have been committed, murder, gunshots. Can you hear me?
No, not here. Just say again.
Okay. Now you have told us, you have given us a backstory of what they do. Have we been able to trace the root causes? What is it that is making these things happen in the first place? And how come we are not able to get ahead of them before we hear of these killings and deaths and all of the other fatalities?
Okay, like I told you earlier on, the major challenge we had then was the issue of getting credible information, of which I tell you that of recent, not too long ago, we have started having some sort of support, some sort of encouragement by providing limited information, which has helped a lot. Now, if you talk about the effort being made, is a whole lot of stakeholders' effort, which, if you look at the way the governor has been going about it, encouraging people, doing a lot of things to show them that, look, both the military, the armed forces, the security agencies, and the government is involved, is interested in their welfare. And people are getting encouraged, little by little to come out. So every stakeholder, every person concerned and is responsible for security in this area is doing a lot. But like we have identified, it's not easy for some people, particularly those who benefit from the criminality, to easily come out of it. So those are the remnants that you are still seeing reacting. Of course, you discover that, I think the last two, up to this one that happened on Saturday, it's like going to corner the people. The first one, they say, we are coming to preach to you, deceive them. And then this one now, somebody like the commentator, the person that answers some questions now, that they didn't even hear gunshots, just like cornering them and all. So it is, all the stakeholders are working together, and we believe that it will be handled, particularly when the people now believe in the government, believe in everybody, that, look, you are there for our welfare. Now, I can say that to about 80%, this idea of saying Western education is bad is almost gone. It's just that to have support, to provide support for the people that are ready on ground for them to tackle the security, the situation there. Yes. That is what I believe is left.
Okay. Now, you dated back to 20 years ago, 1999 or thereabout.
Yeah.
Now, when this happened about that time, what was the reason? What were you able to find out as the reason why people go into this criminality in the first place?
As it were then, I remembered even when it happened then, they called them bandits. And the first commander then, General Temlong retired, said, no, these are not bandits, these are enemies of the land. People using weapons against us, people killing people, slaughtering people. And then it was not defined as it is now, because people sometimes they were nonchalant about it. They were even collecting levies. So the reason then, what is the reason for banditry as it is now? If you now take banditry as a definition, it is the same thing. So that was what they were looked at, bandits and criminals who are not ready to do anything reasonable. That was the reason, and then we were to take them out, and then the whole thing started then, as it were. So there was no, as it were, then it was not defined that it was an ideology. They didn't come up with any ideology, as it were, then it was criminality, and it was handled as criminality.
Now, talking about this case, I mean, a lot of Nigerians are still trying to wrap their heads around how over 40 farmers were slaughtered just like that. And I mean, the person you were referring to, one of the survivors, was saying that, well, they had been in some form of contact with these terrorists. In fact, they will tell them to help them carry loads, and they will do that. So apparently, these terrorists were amongst them way before now. So how is that even possible that we didn't get word of the presence of those terrorists before this attack happened?
Okay, now, you see, I'm happy that you have identified this, because that has been our worry. It's a concern to us. For instance, just like they were among them, like he said, we believe strongly, but you need to be led, you need a guide, you need information. Would they tell us? That's a question that we have to ask. Yes, sometimes, and most times, no. And that was one of the issues that we have been trying to ensure that we overcome with civil-military cooperation activities, reaching out to them, even sending people, by proxy to talk to them. Those are the things that has been one of the bane of the success, final success in this in the whole of this operation. Now look at another situation. Our patrols will pass through a route in a village. By the time you are going, some people are looking at you. When you are coming back, the next thing is that you enter, you meet an IED planted on the road, and people saw them. They won't tell you. So that is the area that I think we are all working together, like I said, the stakeholders. So you are very right in that. And it's not possible to force information out of people. It's not possible at all. Just like they will say you force the horse to the river but not to drink water. So all we are doing is to ensure that we bring up their confidence in the system and then encourage them that, look, this thing is not good for you. Now, they did not expect that this will happen. Even those ones that they deceive that they are preaching to them. And that has been one of the things. So, but gradually, we believe from the moves made by all stakeholders that we are going to overcome that. And then finally, it will just become normal criminality that can be handled easily.
So you're saying prior to this time, the villagers had been sort of conniving with the terrorists, even giving them information about Nigerian military's movement. Is that what has been happening prior to this time?
I didn't say that, and I'm not saying that. The villagers won't do that. In every society, we have a divide, as it is now, we have a divided, I will call it, in a population. You have criminals here. That one is normal and natural. If you now generalize it and say the whole villagers, that means it's not a true assertion, it's not a true situation on the ground. There are a few people there, people who work for them, just like in the Northwest, blaming the great elite. You have informants who tell them, give them movements about, give them information about the movements of security agencies. The moment you pass and go, then I come and rustle cow and then go away. So that is it. That is the same thing everywhere. That you have criminals, informants. They have their own informants, and those are the people I'm talking about, not the whole village.
Well, I mean, that's the same thing I said. I said the villagers, and you just laid credence to that. But pretty much this is in a bid to solve this whole challenge. And I mean, this has lingered for long. You say 10 years, 20 years, and still we have this. But I'd like to know, with the current state of things as it stands right now, would it have been possible maybe, because these farmers were going, I mean, they were going to earn a living, and they were torn betwixt either staying at home and getting hungry or going to the farms to earn a living. Could it have been possible to maybe provide them with some form of air support? I'm just thinking, because there are a lot of questions out there. So let's try to take them one by one, just so that we avoid this happening again. Could it have been possible to probably provide them air support or ground support such that they are protected?
Yes, I will say that that is one of the things we are doing in the Northwest now. We call it the farm patrol and then market patrol. In the Northwest now, that is the strategy, or the strategy that is being done, and is succeeding a lot. As it were, I know that in the Northeast also, we used to have that, but it was not captioned the way I said it. And now, when we do our threat analysis, you will now look at what you should apply to handle the situation there. We have now seen that from this incident, they will need it. But again, we have seen in situations whereby when you want to provide a particular aspect of security service, you need the cooperation of the people. And we believe that with this one now, there's going to be a whole lot of package. Just like the governor has said, you need the garrison troops, the people that will be there, maybe not military, and then there's something developing now that is very interesting, and I believe that by the time it cuts across all, we are talking about constabulary police now. Recently, the Borno State government, 400 of them, the civilian JTF. So those kind of a bridge between the security agencies and then the populace will also help a great lot, that can give information quickly and then will now go for farm patrol and all. That is an area that it can be exploited and will be exploited, because normally you shouldn't come out in the media to give all the plans that you have, because we review our plans moment by moment as it develops. You know, everything is dynamic now, just like the ICT world that we have. So that is a possibility.
Well, there is something you said that got me interested, and I think a number of people might be interested as well. You said that what happens in the Northwest in some cases, that these criminals, they have their own intelligence unit or outlay as well, and so they inform on security agents to these, bandits and criminals, as you put them, and so as soon as you pass by, they foment trouble. Is there any such among the military that has infiltrated the civilian populace in the Northeast as well, such that these do not happen, so that we can get ahead of this, to give information that, okay, this is going to happen? I mean, maybe people from the military, a few people among, the military, who would be also within those communities to ensure that they tell on the criminals as well, just as they receive information about military activities.
Well, this question is a very direct and good question. But it will not help me and you. It will not help the people in the Northeast. It will not help my brothers and sisters who are fighting there if I answer it directly. And it is
But
not
then,
good. You know, the source of information, where your enemies get information, is what we are doing now.
okay. Well, there is
So
also
I would
that
say
one
that
that
we have a robust package. You must listen to me this one. We have a robust package of getting our information, but the nitty-gritty is not good to give on the air, sir.
challenge here is these security issues still occur. 40 people, more than 40 people have died. The United Nations puts it at 110 or thereabouts, which is why this question is being asked. So if they can get ahead of us, there will be an issue. And I understand that you may not have, you won't be able to give all the security information out. But then there is also that which the governor said of government recruiting some of the locals in the various areas into the security apparatus to help in all of this security fighting and all of that. What's your take on that?
Yes, that is a high-level decision that has to be taken. You know, it's a high-level decision because if now you talk about getting people from a particular area, from a zone, into the armed forces, which is a federal civil service, there has to be a lot of considerations. There is something about balance and all, but again, you look at the situation on the ground. So it is beyond the military to say, look, increase your quota in the armed forces. That is what I'm saying directly. So it's a high-level decision that has to be taken beyond the military.
You veered into the Northwest the other time, so let me also go there. We know that Operation Safe Haven is going on, and despite that, just as you heard before we took the first break, 8 people have been killed as a result of attack and counterattack, according to the Commissioner for Internal Security and Home Affairs in Kaduna State. Can you give us a brief background of what happened and how the military is able to get ahead of it?
Yeah, I will. I don't. It will not be fair for me to respond or react to what the Commissioner of Internal Security Kaduna has said. But however, I'm in the position that I get the report almost at the same time, if not on the same platform that he gets. And I also have the privilege of speaking with the commander to also tell me things that they may not be able to, to divulge. And of course, there is nothing in that regard. And the simple fact is that what I can say is that we have followed the trend. For instance, in that area, the moment from either side, either a header is killed on that passes through a farmland or from the other side is killed, not too long, that has been the trend since the whole of this started, I think for about before COVID-19. And it is linked to what has been in that area. So more often, it is reprisal. If I will say that you kill somebody from the other side, now you have like 2 sides, the farmer headers and then the settlers, the people are the southern Kaduna people, the indigenous people or whatever. So the situation tends more to be issue of reprisal. That is what I can say from my own analysis of the information provided by the troops on the ground. And what we have done was to enhance the force package with special forces, both from the Defense Headquarters Special Forces, which is a combination of the Nigerian Army, Navy, and Air Force, and then special forces from the Air Force again, and other security agencies. That is the way we have now enhanced that force package there. And I believe that if not for that, the situation would have been worse than it is now. So that is what we are doing. And like this one that has happened, yes, some of the criminals arrested, they will give information that will be a lead. Of course, we have the state service with us. We have plainclothes policemen that are operating with us also. So that is the way we are going about that.
If we can go back to the Northeast now briefly, because there's been some form of, do I say misinformation, or some information is not quite clear, and I'd like you to just clarify for the record. So earlier yesterday, the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs put out a statement saying 110 people were killed. And then I think that statement was amended saying tens of people were killed. What we have is over 40. So what exactly is the death toll of that killing in Borno State over the weekend, just to put it out there?
Yes, immediately I got that information. I had to contact the people in the theater, right from the commander, or the commanders, theater commander, the GOC, and then the media operations officer that was there, and people that were even on the ground, to give me rather the details, so that because I have to respond, I knew it was going to come up, particularly that is coming from the United Nations and not, like they say, a source that does not want to be identified. This is a source that identified itself, that look over 110 specifically. And I asked them what happened, and they now gave me a synopsis, a story of what happened. When the governor was to go, when people that have, recovered the dead, they requested and that the troops must be on ground. Of course, the troops had to move in there, and they assisted in counting, and they counted 43. Of course, the other people that they interviewed was that since some people ran into the bush, some people ran away, and they started coming back and trickling in. As at 2 p.m. yesterday, I called them, and they got back to me at about 7 p.m. yesterday, still counting, looking for if they will recover, and we call it exploitation, after action review. After action review, as I speak to you, up to when I came here, was still on. Probably we may count up to the figure he gave in the future, but as it is up to when I came here, what we have counted with the locals here is still 43. And we are hoping that we don't get beyond that. And then even if there are people that ran into the bush like missing in action, they should come back alive. So that is the situation, the real situation. I did not sleep on. We had to follow it because this is very, very relevant. If it was somebody like, say, look, don't mention my name, an informant that does not want to be named. Normally we know that nowadays we have a lot of people that have turned themselves into journalists. They just give information that they are not requested to. They are just busybody all over the whole place. But now United Nations saying that, so we need to follow it squarely, and we are following it. And we come out with what the situation as at before I came into the studio is still that figure.
Okay, we'll go on a break in about a minute and a half, General, but I just need to get this one out also. Now, this attack happened at a time that they were electing local government officials, first time in 13 years. And, this was going to be a major breakthrough, having to conduct these elections. But seeing this attack now, has it affected anything in that regard, or do you even think it's related to that election in some sense?
My dear, I think that question should not be for me. You are talking about election. Ask me a question about operations. But however, as somebody at my level, definitely for human beings it will affect. Psychologically, and it may be one of the reasons to distract people and to discourage them.
Well, because the truth is, you have said that this is Boko Haram is against Western education, they're against anything government-wise. So it's natural, people thinking maybe the elections are related to the attack. But we'll need to go on a break now. And when we come back, we'll talk about fresh ideas, because that's what a lot of people are clamoring for. How do we get fresh ideas into this theater of operations such that we get better results moving forward? And we'd like to, hear from you in a moment. Please stay with us.
Definitely so many issues to look at when we talk about tackling insecurity in Nigeria. But General Enenche, you want to react to what you just heard the former governor of Kaduna State say, that there is a need to rejig the security architecture. Many times people don't really understand what that means. When we talk about rejigging the security architecture, as many have said, what are we talking about? And is there a need for us to change strategy now, especially in the Northeast?
When you talk about rejigging security architecture as it is now in this country, it means different things to so many people. I will want to look at the training and then the best practice when you talk about an issue like this, or any issue at all that has become topical. You define it, you conceptualize it before you talk about it. And my own conceptualization and definition of rejigging the architecture is about strategy that we are applying in the field, not anything beyond that. So I would not want to directly toe the line of, the governor, as he has said it. That is by believing, because I read a lot, I read widely, and so many people look at it from different perspectives. But let us look at it from this perspective, which is in my purview and my responsibility. The strategy is what we tinker with every other time. As I speak with you, we hold meetings every other time, particularly on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. But at short notice, we call the meetings, the High Command of the Armed Forces, and then we begin to think of what we need to do to make it better. Just like what has happened now, just happened on Saturday, that of course they have been farming there for a long time. If you now look at, if you look at the whole scenario that it played out, it's not that farming, you just don't just come today, tomorrow, and then you stay there for weeks. Or I know that in that area they even have farm camps. There was a particular time, 2018, that the army even empowered them with tractors and all, by way of civil military cooperation. So rejigging now is for us now to sit down, and which we have started as far back as that when the incident was reported up to yesterday. How do we make it better? So that is what I said that we do, generally. What about the force package? How do we make the force package now? We're looking at the composition of the force. We're looking at the approach, the tactics, right to the tactics, and then the operational moves that we do there. The campaign plan cell, we now sit down at the various theaters, particularly that is the various sectors in that area, and then come up where we see that there are things that we need to do better. We do it, and we do that constantly. If there is need to rotate, if there is need to change, we change, and all those things.
But
General, that is what we do.
Perhaps there is a need.
We are looking at rejigging our own.
Just a moment. Perhaps there is a need to, help people understand why this is continuing, because there are some things that are cast in stone, or so to speak. The terrain in the Northeast. A number of people would talk about vast, ungoverned areas in the Northeast and expansive areas of bad roads that so many times we have had, information in the social media and everywhere else that the military loses a lot of hardware trying to get from point to point. A place that ordinarily should take maybe about 5 minutes takes hours to get across. So in that light, those challenges are there. Those terrain challenges are there. And if the strategies that we have not worked, what is going to work? You talked about this, farm camps and all of that, which the survivor also referenced. How helpful has that been? So again, I ask, if there is anything that we need to change, especially in our approach and, as you said, our tactics, given the difficulty of this terrain that's usually vast and, as they say, ungoverned.
Let's look at that, what they refer to as ungoverned and ungoverned over the time. Yes, there is a challenge in that regard, but we are all home and dry with the COVID-19 pandemic that gave all sectors, as far as I am concerned, I stand to be corrected, setbacks in their timelines of achievement. We are all aware that out there that we have to make UAVs and then other devices that could provide surveillance for us beyond the normal human surveillance and the equipment that we have. All those ones, we were packaged to take care of this. Now, for the production of military equipment, it's not something that is like cooking. It's a mechanical device. It's not, thank God that it's not even a chemical device where if you stop, you have to go around all over again. We have them in place, and then production was on. But when COVID-19 came, it affected it, so it gave the setback. Otherwise, this plan of covering ungovernable terrain with UAVs and then what they call kites in the air, all of them were in place, and the technical partners, the original equipment producers also had to obey COVID-19 rules of maybe sending people away to regroup. And even then, in some parts of the world that we are getting this equipment from, the second wave of COVID-19 came. So I needed to give this up because it's not like the High Command, the Armed Forces has not made provision for that. They had the foresight, it was projected that we need to get equipment. And provisions were made. We went to, of course, our DIC does not produce, it's not at that level for now, but they are getting there. So that is what the strategic plan at strategic level of the High Command, even the operational level that we have, that by the time these platforms, force multipliers come into place, is going to be a game changer. And that is what we are hoping for, that, it will, with the COVID-19 now going down, all over the whole place, and factories, original equipment manufacturers are coming back to work. We believe that maybe the shift in the agreement for all this equipment and platforms will not take too long. So that is that. Then for the tactics, we sit down, like we do now. We have this one, I think I can give it out. We have the mobile strike teams, as it were, then before we now change to Army super camps. Then within that one now, we will still need to, what we are doing to ensure that we have the packets that can penetrate, using the terrain, as it were, with the relevant equipment. And that was why you see that the Army particularly came up with the issue of motorcycle battalions and all those things. So all those things are the change of, tactics that are being implemented.
Okay. General, Senator Ali Ndume, who is the chairman Senate Committee on the Army, said the military is not funded enough. Is it true?
Well, you see, I cannot talk on that. Funding. I'm a coordinator of the defense media operations. Why should I be talking on funding now? Funding is above my schedule of responsibilities. So spare me that one.
But I ask that because, just as you said, we lose equipment that need to be replaced, and consequently, if those equipment are not replaced, there would be a challenge, of being able to tackle these insecurity issues that we're having. That's the reason I'm asking. How quickly are you able to replace equipment of the military?
At my operational level.
Yes, exactly. So how quickly are you able to replace equipment that get bad in the course of work?
Our replacement is normal. Is at the normal rate. Once we meet, particularly on Fridays, they give us information. We talk just like virtually. They give their situation reports about equipment that they need to be replaced for the various sections, and then we work it out with logistics and then send it across to them.
Speaking of those situation reports, just to put it on record, you also put it out last week that our troops, eliminated about 108 bandits and scores of terrorists across the northeast and the northwest, just to show the work that our troops are doing, which we are forever indebted to them. But, earlier on, we were talking about fresh ideas, and I'm sure you've been following the conversation or not, but there are a lot of people calling for fresh ideas. And the question is, on your own table, do you need fresh ideas?
Of course, we need fresh ideas. Like I was at the graduation ceremony of Army War College on Friday last week. Incidentally, I was a commandant there before. And what we do from my time, we now play what we call exercise star ride. We have the similar one at the National Defense College, even at the Armed Forces Command and Staff College. We now play real lifetime exercise. You bring the scenario as it is, as peak, present, continuous, present to the participants and the students, and they play it out and they wargame it. They see where there are areas that they could improve upon, and then they bring out their report. Those are fresh ideas because it is dynamic. So we get input from the war colleges and then the NDC, and then also we have planning teams for every operation. We have a central planning team at Defense Headquarters, and the same thing replicated at the Services Headquarters. And those are the people that now, the groups now, come up with these ideas. What I can tell you, I can assure you that most of the things we do progressively are never in the past. What we did last week may not be the same with what we are going to do this week. So that is the fresh ideas. That is how we generate them from the various components that I have mentioned.
So the question now will be, does a change of leadership, in this case the service chiefs, will that also bring fresh ideas perhaps from the top? Because that's also one thing that a lot of people have been calling for.
Well, you are not being fair to me asking me that question about change of service chiefs, because I cautioned you, the person that contacted me, I cautioned the person, is beyond me. You should be fair. You know where to channel these questions to. So I don't, how can a Major General, Coordinator of Defense Media Operations, will be asking him how will the change of service chiefs, affect this thing? So please leave that one out.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. The question is just, does fresh ideas come also from the top? Which is why I said, will the change in leadership also guarantee fresh ideas? So you said fresh ideas come from the men. How about the top? Does it come also from the top?
My training is bottom-up approach. That is a new training as intercontinental system. It comes from the bottom up. Then you now look at it at the top. I have been a commander. I have been a commandant. So that is the way it works. Our intercontinental staff system, which is very effective and works. You don't look down on your subordinates. You don't look down on your junior commanders. They are the people out there in the field. I was in the field several years ago, up to when I became a colonel, commanded a peace or support operations and came back. So you get it better from, is the bottom-up approach that is better.
Right.
From our teaching and from our experience. Because if you now go and bear on them, that means you are lording it over your subordinates. No, you carry them along. They bring up their ideas. Then you look at it.
Well, Alice, thank you for shedding more light on that. We appreciate. But on a final note, as we wind down, do you think it's sometimes unfair when people blame the military a lot for some of these insecurity challenges? Do you sometimes sit back and say, well, it's not just the army. There's a police. There's the NSCDC. So to what extent do you think that Nigerians should understand who is in charge of what and where to channel some of these grievances to?
Well, it is unfortunate that we have to be channeling grievances, particularly for a security issue. I think more education about what each agency, particularly the security outfits, should do. That education will help a lot. Of course, the armed forces is supposed to protect the territorial integrity, and then going down like that to provide support to the civil authorities, and then going further to support other security agencies when they are overwhelmed. So there is stage by stage. So to cut across and blame all the security agencies, it will not be too good. It's just like, and also the populace also have their own part to play. There are parts of the world where the civilians take it upon themselves to report promptly. But from my own experience over the years, I discovered that it takes a lot of prompting for people to come forward with information. So if we will blame, the blame should not be narrowed down to the military and then to the security agencies. And I want to recommend that all the stakeholders should educate the general public more on the need to participate in the whole of tackling the security situation, and it will go a long way in helping all of us.
Well, Major General John Enenche, Coordinator, Defense Media Operations, Defense Headquarters, thank you so much this morning, and we wish you all the best all the time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, we'll take a short break now and look at other solutions. To stay with us.
Well, the Electoral Act Amendment Bill has passed second reading at the National Assembly. And this has been a long time coming. If you've been following the trend, you'll see that this is not the first time we've gone through this process. At some point, it got up to the presidency, but then it was returned. And now this is another, process all over again. And the questions are, what is different this time? And how would this change our electoral process? Mind you, don't forget that the electoral process basically determines the kind of leadership we get. So we need to sort out the electoral process such that we can have quality leadership. And this morning, as you may have seen in that slide, we have two gentlemen joining us to discuss these issues that are of utmost importance to you. Honorable Benjamin Kalu is a member of the House of Representatives and the spokesman of the House. He joins us via Zoom, as well as Samson Itodo, the Executive Director of Yaga Africa, also joining us via Zoom. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us on Sunrise Daily.
Thank you for inviting me, and good morning, Nigerians.
Honorable Kalu, let me begin with you because, I mean, the ball, as they say, is largely in your court. But for a lot of Nigerians, they wonder just how much of a game changer is this? So let me just put it in simple terms. Why should Nigerians be bothered or be interested in this process?
Thank you very much. You see, the need for electoral legal framework reform in Nigeria has become an absolute necessity against the backdrop of election malpractices, widespread rejection of declared election results, violence, loss of lives and properties that usually go along with these electoral flaws. And more importantly, our electoral laws appear to be outdated and, if you may allow me to say, ill-equipped to adequately address these concerns that forms the very foundation of our democracy. You know, and based on this, the Ninth Assembly, through their legislative agenda, when they came on board, prioritized on the need to reform the Electoral Act for obvious reasons. So what we are trying to do at the moment is a proposal of a bill that is to amend, that is to repeal the Act number 6 of 2010 and bring in a new one that is to be known as Independent Electoral Commission Act 2020 to regulate the conduct of elections, both from the state, federation, and council elections and other related matters. Like you asked, what are the reasons for this? Why do we need it now? The flaws are much, like I mentioned. There is a nexus that is between the efficient and effective electoral legal framework and that of the conduct of a fair and free election. This is what this bill seeks to achieve. Also, the need to address the gaps that have been found in the legal framework ahead of this 2023 election, which I'm going to list for you at the moment. But before that, this bill will help us consolidate on our achievement so far, you know, our democratic achievement so far. Because if we allow it, since it's a teaching democracy, we will lose what we have achieved over these 20 years. And what are those gaps that you may ask? You know that our current law as it is does not cover the interests of card reader and electronic voting system as it's supposed to be. The criteria for substitution of candidates, the disclosure of funds contributed to a political party, the replacement of lost or destroyed permanent voters card, the penalty for the possession of fake voters card, the date for conducting primaries, and to provide a timeline for submission of list of candidates, the limit on campaign expenses, and as well as addressing the omission of names or logos of political parties in election. We can go on and on. You are aware that 5 years ago, around 2015, we noticed a very big challenge in our electoral process with what happened in Kogi State, where a governorship candidate who was leading at the commencement of the poll, died before the declaration of results. We found ourselves in a difficult position. These are some of the things that this law that we are bringing on board seeks to address, which I'm going to mention to you as we discuss, is found in our section 36 of this particular bill. Now, historically speaking, like you mentioned, this is not the first time we are looking at this bill. It started, the 8th Assembly considered it, but because of typographical errors, it was not able to pass through and obtain the assent of Mr. President. Now, because we prioritized on it, we made it the front burner on the 21st of July. It was given the first hearing. The second hearing came up around the 24th of November. And this bill seeks to amend about 300 clauses of the current Electoral Act, as well as incorporate proposals from INEC and also additions that were made in the bill that was not assented to by Mr. President in the 8th Assembly. It's a combination of all those that we are bringing on board to make sure that this we have will be a solid bill that will take care of the gaps that is currently existing. And some of the areas that you're going to see us looking at in the bill include 180 days to the election, that fund must be released to the commission. It includes that if you are seeking an
Honorable Kalu, if you can hear me.
INEC,
don't let's let the cat out of the bag, as they say, just yet. Let's get Mr. Itodo's opening comments also, and then, of course, we'll take a look at these things much closer. So, Mr. Itodo, I mean, yes, these amendments, there are quite a number of them, but as some form of opening statement for you, what is the biggest game changer, really, looking at some of these amendments?
Well, thanks, and good morning. First is, this is the 10th year, so we are celebrating a decade of the current Electoral Act, because it was enacted in 2010 and has been amended 3 times. The first was in December of 2010 and also January of 2011, and then the amendment that was made in 2015. And what you can clearly see is an attempt to review our electoral law to strengthen or deepen democratic culture in Nigeria. As much as we have amended this act 3 times, it appears that the political class are still desperate for political power. Our democratic institutions are still very weak. The votes of the people are still being threatened because we are experiencing all forms of voter suppression. And so I agree that our electoral legal framework needs to be amended, but it must address 5 things. And the first is, how does it, reset the mindset of the political class in Nigeria? And it's to the effect that we have seen cases where politicians, force INEC officials to declare results at gunpoint. We've also seen cases where politicians, undermine our judicial process, bribe judges, and procure all forms of Jankara judgments just to disrupt and perpetuate themselves in office. The second point is also around electoral justice, that our electoral legal framework needs to deliver justice to the people. And that is why you have a law. The third point is about citizens' participation, that it's important that an electoral amendment really addresses this question of access to the political process for young people, for women, for persons with disability. The fourth point is around, election security. How does this secure people? Because elections seem to be a source of conflict for people and across the world. And so to what extent will an electoral law, secure people's lives and property? And the fifth very, very important point, it's also about, institutions, that no democracy thrives without strong institutions. And in this case, it's not just INEC as an institution, but our political parties, media, civil society. How does our electoral process respond to this quest for strengthening democratic institutions? And so for me, as a way of initial comment, is any electoral amendment that does not advance these 5, goals that I've outlined, which for me are in tandem with the common good, because that's what Nigerians want, and will be an effort in futility. But the current amendments, the proposed amendments, seem to address, some of these issues, but there are some gaps.
Gentlemen, this is not the National Assembly, but when we come back, we'll do some sort of clause-by-clause examination of these amendments. So please stay with us. Welcome back. We're still taking a look at the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, which is going through the legislative process. So just to bring you up to speed about where we are and what to expect from that process. And I still have with us on the program Benjamin Kalu, who is a spokesman, House of Representatives, and member of the House of Representatives, of course, as well as Mr. Samson Itodo, the Executive Director of YAGA Africa. Thank you, gentlemen, for your patience. So, Mr. Itodo, if we could now take a look at those amendments one after the other. First, electronic voting, which for a lot of people is perhaps the biggest change here. Well, it varies across, but electronic voting. And I see that an amendment was made to Section 52, Sub 2, which prohibits the use of electronic voting machine to empower the Commission to adopt either electronic voting or any other method of voting at its discretion. So that is one major change in this particular amendment bill. And the question will be just how much of a success will that be? A lot of people have questioned that there might be some hiccups, the integrity, they talk about hacking and all that, but just how much of a success will this be?
I think it will lead to a lot of success. And electronic voting will provide access to the people to a large extent, although there are, polling units across the country who don't have, coverage or that data coverage. And so will it, reduce human errors? Yes, it will. Will it promote transparency? To an extent, it will. But there are also some downsides. And that is why it is important that Nigeria should have a deeper conversation beyond the electronic voting to things like the machines. Because one thing we don't want is to, Raila Odinga of Kenya calls them computer-generated leaders. We don't want computer-generated leaders because the challenge with electronic voting is one man can just by the click, alter the votes of the people. Because one thing with elections is the whole concept of trust. Now, electoral trust is not blind trust. If, as of today, when people were voting manually and people can see their ballot papers and see result sheets and they don't trust the result sheets, the results on result sheets, is it when, it becomes automated that they can no longer see that they will trust? So these are things that we need to look at. The second point is about the culture. Trust me, if the political class does not change their culture, there is no amount of technology you're going to bring into the process that will guarantee the sanctity of the ballot, because there will always be attempts to do what? To undermine the process. But it's good to see that this bill has expansive, amendments and provisions for electronic voting. We should, but we have to deploy this incrementally. Let's look at the issue of cost. Now, we've got 120,000 polling stations. We've got about 54,000 voting points.
Moment, before you go to those details, just one moment before you go to those details, there is something you said in response to Kaudi's question, which you mentioned earlier. In fact, you say is the number one item, number one thing that has to be addressed in all of these reforms and amendments and adjustments to the laws that we are talking about, and that is the attitude of politicians. Now, the law has been there. A number of people would still always allude to the fact that one of the issues that this law, for instance, hopes to address is spending or election spending and how even that is monitored by INEC. So you said that we need to find a way to ensure that this law is made compelling for politicians, for the political class, and all of that. And you have also said now that irrespective of all of the adjustments to the card reader and all, the attitude of politicians is crucial. So how do we address that? We can't legislate attitude, can we? There are laws, that, haven't been abided by these same people that we're talking about. Otherwise, we would not be talking about the kind of elections that we have been having over time. So how do we legislate or work around the attitude of politicians in a way that, come what may, they line up with the laws?
So first is, why do people seek political power? And if you look at elections across the country, ask yourself, how come people are spending billions of naira because they want to get into public office? Is it for service? Do you need to force yourself on the people? Why do people have to, force INEC officials to declare results at gunpoint? Why do people have to recruit thugs like you saw in Kogi State election? Why? It's because people don't use power. They don't come to public or governance or public politics with the intention to serve the people. They see it as an opportunity for primitive accumulation of wealth. They see it as an opportunity to appropriate political power, to use it at the expense of the people. That's why they go all the way to use both legal and non-legal means to procure power. And so this desperation, it's what we need to address. And this attitude, can the law regulate political behavior of the political class? Yes, it can. You need to enforce the law. But I say that you need strong institutions to implement those laws. But what our politicians have done is, when they see an institution thriving and it's strong, they undermine the institution. And I give you a classic example. Let's use 2019 elections. As we talk about the cost of elections, the budget for the 2019 elections was 189 billion naira. When did the federal government release the money for INEC to conduct the elections? They released 145 billion naira in November 2018. That's 3 months to the general elections. The remaining part of that money, 45 billion, was released in December. That's 60 days to the elections. There is no better way to undermine the institution of INEC by releasing, the funding for the elections very late. And that's one of the things that this amendment seeks to do, to safeguard the independence of INEC by ensuring that INEC gets all the money it needs for elections 6 months. That way, you've limited the power of incumbency, or what incumbents use to undermine the elections. You look at the security agencies. You look at the judiciary today. Is the current judiciary able to deliver electoral justice? Most of the judgments that have come from our courts, have really questioned our electoral jurisprudence. And so our institutions are very, very critical. They have to rise above board. They need to protect our constitutional fidelity and hold our politicians to account. And the last point is about citizens. If you look at turnout for elections, have been abysmally poor. The more people stay out of elections and not vote for their candidates, the more we would have leaders who don't respect the will of the people. So staying away from voting is giving this political class an opportunity to perpetuate themselves in office. And so people need to come out, to cast their vote and hold their leaders to account post-elections.
Okay. Well, Honorable Kalu, you have heard him, and you're a politician, and a number of people have said that over and over again on this platform and several others. How do you react to that?
Thank you very much. I like what my colleague is discussing. In fact, he's doing the job for us by highlighting some of the reasons why we are going for these amendments. If these reasons were not there, there will be no need for this amendment. You don't strengthen any institution without laws. We use pieces of legislation to strengthen institutions. And no piece of legislation is 100% watertight. It is as we go on in the use of this legislation, we find gaps that need to be blocked, and we block it. And that is what we are doing 10 years after the Electoral Act. And those who are doing it are also politicians. The legislators are politicians. So when you say politicians are not interested in strengthening the institution, they want to make use of the weakness in the institution, I actually disagree. That is too hasty a conclusion to be made by my colleague who is speaking on the other side. We are interested in building a formidable democracy, and that was what inspired us to, first of all, do the needs analysis that is in line with the wishes, the ambitions, the desires of Nigerians, and which are lacking in our existing law. and we have taken our time to highlight ways to fill up this gap. But suffice that to say that this is not the final position of it. You know, in the process of making a law, there is a room for people like him and other ones who are watching this program to come in via the public opinion through their memoranda, to come in during the public hearing to put in their opinion that will help us strengthen some of the proposals. At the moment, the bill is a proposal before the House. It has not gone through clause-to-clause consideration and all the rest of them. It has been referred to the basic committees of the House. So, which means there are still rooms to, you know, to fill up some gaps that are existing there. But having said that, on the issue of a smart card, the use of electronic device for our election, I like the way he agreed with us that it will add a lot of value to our political system. That we are not going to get it right overnight does not mean that we should not allow tradition to be taken over by innovation. And that is what technology does. Tradition may not be as productive as it's supposed to be. That is why innovation comes in. And technology is one of the fastest ways of increasing productivity in our electoral process. This can read the electronic use of, electronic application in our electionary process. It should be encouraged because yes, there will be bottlenecks when we start it, but over time, I am sure we're going to get used to it because this is what is the standard practice all the world over, and we cannot be left behind. I agree with him that it's going to deliver better result. And also on the attitude of how do you monitor the attitude of politicians? It is by strengthening this institution through laws that has punitive measures. If you look at the laws we are bringing on board, I had you mentioning, I had him mentioning people taking over presiding officers and all the INEC officers and making sure that even on that gunpoint that they declare a result that does not reflect the wish of the people. Now we have a new amendment in our laws now that is in section 28 that has to do with oath by all. Before it was limited to few, but all participating in election process from the side of the commission are bound to take that oath that they will not accept gratification, they will not act in line with fear or favor, they will deliver the expectation of their office without any bias. And if all of them take this oath, it means how they used to feel before collecting gratifications and influencing things unnecessarily is out there for anyone who wants to go against the law. And then finally, on the issue of attitude of politicians, yes, I agree. Money is a big influencer in the conduct of our election. And that is why in our section 90 of this particular proposal, we are saying there should be limits to contribution to a political party, in the conduct of the election. We also said there should be a limit, of the amount that is supposed to be used by each of the candidates. If you are contributing to the party, we don't want it to be above this particular amount so that you will not have undue influence over the political party. If you are running your campaign,
you just mentioned
saying,
now. Just a moment. On that which you just mentioned now, even the current law has that limit. And a question anyone would want to ask you is, how do we monitor that? So is there an instrument in the new proposal? If you can tell us about it, if there is, how you monitor the campaign fundings, because as you know, many people would say that most of the campaign funding is not done electronically. They're done via cash. So how are you going to monitor spending if there is no way to track?
That is one of the issues that will come up during the public hearing. It's one of the things we also considered during the debate. This particular issue came up. And we are still deliberating on how to ensure that source of funding, it is captured, that the commission, they are also allowed to monitor the source of funding. That you can find in that section 90, subsection 2, that they have the right to demand information on the amount that is being used or donated, and also the source. So if there is any suspicion, by the commission on the amount that is being spent, or there is a petition, or there is anything coming from the public that shows the red flag, that announces that there is that a particular candidate or a particular party has gone against the law, the torchlight of the commission will now be beamed towards that candidate or that party. And they are allowed by this new proposal to demand information. And in demanding such information, I know we have various agencies of our law, security agencies that are charged with financial responsibility to make sure that we comply with the financial regulations of our country. And at that point, they are allowed to invite them to do an auditing of process once there is a red flag on this. So that is going to be one of the ways of monitoring what is. The public must be involved. Like he said, public participation. Public participation is not just going to be queuing up to cast your vote. Public participation is going to
just a moment. Even at that, talking about monitoring these campaign funds and all of that, remember one of the functions of INEC is to check the books of the political parties. A number of people, civil society organizations, have alluded to the fact that a good number of political parties do not do that. So if we have laws that are not being lived to the tenets of now, what's the assurance that the next one will?
Because this one has punitive measures that are very well defined, unlike how it was before. If you have a law that does not bite, it will not command compliance. The only way legislations will command compliance is if it has a sword that is attached to the law. So
does the consequence this time around, Honorable Kalu, does the consequence include deregistering a political party that does not open its books to INEC?
That is one of the things we'll consider in the course of the committee level. Like I say, as it is one of the proposals. And that is one of the things I'm going to take back from this engagement with you now. You're just suggesting that the regulation of the political party could be a punitive measure. These are the things that we're going to harvest from the public. When we do the public engagement, we are going to lead advocacy on this particular bill before even the public hearing, where we will harvest the opinion of people like you who have suggestions to make for the legislators to consider before the final version of this proposal comes up. But what Nigerians should be happy with is that we have started the process. We have understood their cries and their complaints about the weakness of the existing 10-year-old Electoral Act. And we are coming up with ways that will bridge this gap. We need partnership. The partnership with the people and the parliament will help us deliver what is meant for us, not for the politician. I will not subscribe to the argument that says politicians are all bad. Politicians want to do this so that they benefit from this. No, it's not about that. We are building an institution that even when we stop being politicians, that it will be able to help us in strengthening our democracy. Our eyes are on the ball. And what is the ball? To make our democracy go from the teaching stage to an advanced stage, where we'll become an inspiration to other African countries that are still battling with their desire to be a democratic government. So that is where we are pushing to set the standard. Was the other one perfect? No, if it was, we will not be here where we are. The one we are doing now, is it going to be perfect? I don't think so. I only think it will be, an advanced stage, a better version of what was in existence before. As the dynamic of the society increases, we will be able to find challenges that need to be filled up. And we will make effort to make sure that we use legislation or legislative intervention to bridge those gaps. That is what the parliament does.
Well, one of the other gaps which we'll probably point to when we return from this break is the cost of nomination forms. Please stay with us. Mr. Todo, we've seen aspirants having to pay 45 million naira for expression of interest forms or nomination forms, as the case may be. Some 12 million naira. That's for the presidential level. For governorship, you see 22.5 million naira, 12 million naira, and it goes on and on. I know this amendment is proposing, I think, 10 million naira for the presidential aspirant and 5 million naira for the governorship aspirants. But the question is, even at that, don't you think it will be shutting out some people who might not have the wherewithal to afford that, but still they might do well in governance?
I agree with you 100% that this cost is still very high, and maybe the National Assembly should consider reviewing it. Yes, it's a progressive step because what it does is it limits parties to these thresholds, because parties have been complicit in exploiting aspirants during elections and begging high cost of nomination fees. It's quite problematic for our electoral process. So this is a progressive amendment, but I think 10 million naira is still very high. It should be reviewed downward. I know the justification will be that because we don't have state funding for political parties, parties use generate revenue from the sale of funds to run party affairs. But I think for those offices, I think it should be reviewed downward. But there are two quick points I need to make on this point about campaign financing. One of the gaps in the law is if you look at campaign spending, if you look at section 88 down to 92, it talks about contributions to a candidate. It doesn't say aspirants. And so if we're going to amend the law, we should also cover, the point of aspiration, because oftentimes, donations are made to aspirants before they become candidates. And when they become candidates, it becomes, the party affair. So as we're introducing campaign spending limits and monitoring, it should extend to even when people are aspiring to secure the nomination of their parties. And the second point was around audits, and monitoring. Organizations have been monitoring campaign finance over the years, and as at today, I don't know of any prosecution, that has taken place and someone who has gone to jail for violating the law. And it still boils down to this point about strong institutions, that we need institutions to implement these laws, else they will just be there on the page, on the leaves of our Electoral Act. Because if you look at the 2015 elections, look at 2019, both the PDP and the APC violated campaign finance regulations. In 2015, even when the law says 1 billion is pegged for presidential elections, we still saw how, about 2.1 billion that was earmarked for procuring arms was used. In fact, the former Minister of Petroleum Resources actually was alleged to have distributed close to 23 billion naira. If you look at the media expenditure of both the APC and the PDP in the 2019 elections, it went above that. But no one is speaking. The law provides that after every election, 3 months after every election, after a general election, political parties are required to submit a report to INEC. As at today, we don't know how many political parties have submitted their audited statements and accounts. So it boils down to what? Implementation. But INEC needs to be strengthened. But INEC cannot do this alone. Civil society, and I think the legislature also has a role, to play in trying to regulate, or ensure compliance with some of these this laws.
I was going to take this back to Honorable Kalu just to get his thoughts on the nomination form and what's the thinking. But clearly there will still be a public hearing, and maybe before then we'll have our own version of a public hearing right here on Sunrise Daily. But gentlemen, we have come to the end of the program and this discussion for today. I would like to thank you so much, Honorable Benjamin Kalu, spokesperson of the House of Representatives, as well as Mr. Samson Itodo, the Executive Director of IAGA Africa. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, and wish you the very best with that amendment.
Always a delight. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
When you said it's not the National Assembly, the question that came to my mind is, isn't it the People's Assembly?
That works.
Well, we have to thank you also for allowing us to be a part of your morning. Have a wonderful day. My name is Ayo Makinde.
And I'm Kaido Kikili. Thank you for joining us.